Hi, my name's Dale Stott. We're here on the Fox, my Riviera 6000. It's about 2.5 years old and we're sitting out here on Broughton Island. We're currently on our migration north. We've come from Meetung in Victoria and we're cruising up the coast, taking the boat through to the Gold Coast. One of the important skills in coastal cruising is anchoring. It's something that's definitely required because things change in boating or coastal cruising. You make plans, but things change, weather conditions change, availability of berths change. So at that point you need to understand how to anchor safely, taking in all the weather conditions, the sea conditions and the environment. So on this boat we're running a Ultra anchor. It's a stainless steel anchor. It's a good looking anchor, but it's obviously a very practical and very useful anchor. It holds well, and that's something you need to do. You need to have an anchor that you're confident with, that you know that's going to hold well for you, to give you that confidence to sleep overnight. Ideally you need to do safety checks on your chain, looking for wear, looking for damage, checking your connection to your anchor and making sure that's in a serviceable condition. A well-maintained chain will feed in nicely. It needs to be something that's free-flowing and so it gathers inside your chain box. The chain must be fitted with a swivel larger than the diameter of the chain to prevent it from kinking. We're looking for some ground that's fairly consistent. We're not looking for something that's too rocky. We don't want to get our chain and anchor wrapped around bommies. Because we're running a sand anchor, we're looking for a sandy bottom or muddy bottom is fine. Something that's fairly stable will give you a good solid hold for the night. The other thing to keep a lookout for is tide and current. 1 knot of current is equivalent to 15 knots of wind. So therefore, if you can shelter in a bay or an area out of the main channel or where the free-flowing current is, you're going to be in a lot stronger position for anchoring. If you're in an anchorage that's got a lot of swell, you're going to get extra load on your chain and your anchor. The rising of the fall of the boat will create pull against the anchor and jerking, which will help dislodge or move your anchor. So the concept of putting a lot of chain out to create a scope and flatten your chain out is so that it gets a horizontal pull, so it beds the anchor into the sand or the mud or the surface that you're anchoring to. During the night you'll have change of wind direction, you'll have change of tide. So if you're putting out 35 metres of chain, plus your boat's 20 metres long, you're 55 metres from your anchor to the back of your boat. Now when that swings around the other way during the night, that's 55 metres the other direction. So therefore you can be up to 110 metres just in swing room required. So you always got to establish the amount of room between yourself and other boats or the shore or obstacles to ensure that you've got enough swing room to go a full circle without any obstructions. When selecting a spot to anchor, it's always good to have a look and ensure that there's no underground cables, pipes, you're in a restricted area. There's a lot of places in marine national parks which are no anchoring, you're only allowed to pick up buoys. So you need to check and do your research before you select your spot to anchor. You've chosen where you want to set your anchor down, you're checking your bottom with your depth, your surroundings for other boats, come up into the wind to keep control of your boat. We need to make sure we've got our safety lanyards disconnected. We engage power up our winch. And then once we've come into position, then we start to pay out the anchor. We start off by going down to the anchor hits the bottom at the depth I've chosen to anchor at, and then we start to feed out our amount of anchor as per our depth. So if you're in favourable conditions, we want to put out, with our depth, we want to put out 5 to 1. So that means if it's 5 metres deep, we would put out 25 metres of chain in favourable conditions. If we had moderate conditions, we would look to go to a ratio of 8 to 1. And then if we're in really rough seas, we basically put out as much as we have, or 10 to 1 is ideal. Most boats have got chain counters. If you haven't got chain counters, it's best to mark your chain with coloured marking points, different colours representing different meterage. Securing the anchor can be done with a couple of methods. Some people use a bridle or a snubber, it's also known as. This takes the noise out of the chain, the grinding noise running across the seabed. So what we do is we put our snubber on, which puts a rope between the chain and connecting to the boat. We also then want to put our safety clips on. We've had our winch locked off tight, but we've also then engaged our lock on our winch or a safety lanyard to our chain to prevent slippage during the night. There's a couple of different ways to check for slippage during the night, because our anchor may not let go on our winch, but obviously our anchor can drag. With your electronics on your boat, you can set an anchor alarm. This means you've got to leave your electronics on overnight, but you can set a radius around your anchor, and then if the boat was to go outside of that, an alarm will go off. This warns you to say that you're starting to drift. If you're getting shuddering through your anchor and because you have wave action and you're feeling that jerking, these are signs that you can be dragging your anchor. Every time that it pulls up hard and you feel that jerking, that's highly likely that you're pulling your anchor. Taking visual references is certainly something that you need to do as well. And the other thing is obviously just leave your track on, and then it'll show a continuous track as you're just yawing backwards and forwards. It'll show a contour line, and then if you were to let go, it would actually show that you've moved off. When anchoring, if overnight, you need to put on your anchor light so other boats can see where you are. It's great if you've got things like AIS, which transmits from the boat to let other boats know you're there. If we find that we're drifting during the night or during the day, for a start we put out more chain and to increase our scope. The other thing is we can put out a second anchor if we have one. If not, we may have to lift up, find a new position to anchor and find something with a better bottom. If you've got an anchor that you're finding's not suitably working for you, change your anchor. Now that it's time to weigh your anchor or retrieve your anchor, there's a few steps we need to take. We need to brief all crew members. We need to make sure everything's put away in its position, ready to make way. We need to make sure everybody's aware of what we're doing, start our engines, check our controls, make sure everything's going in gear prior to letting go of the anchor. We need to engage the gypsy and disengage the brake. When retrieving, we need to motor up on the chain and towards the anchor to reduce the pressure on the winch. We want to drive the boat up into the wind, keeping the chain coming in nice, straight, not in on an angle, but straight forward to retrieve it into the... If you're anchoring somewhere where you've got mud or weed, get your hose, wash that off so it's straight overboard, keep it nice and clean. If you find you've got your anchor caught without knowing it's underneath a rock that you didn't know about, sometimes you've actually got to drive around in a circle around that point. Don't just keep trying to winch until you burn your winch out. You need to then change your angle to dislodge your anchor. It's great if you've got a spotter up the front to help communicate which direction. As you're pulling your anchor in, they can point the direction that the chain's facing so that you can keep it coming in, as well as identify if there's anything on the anchor, we've picked anything up, there's weed on it that needs to be cleared. On this particular boat we've got a camera which assists us, so I can also see what's happening with the chain if it's going under the boat, but we still utilise a spotter at the same time.